So the dress is pretty simple and easy, a normally constructed dress. Here you can see the steps that it's going through, the bodice, the zipper, the side seams, until you get to step 16. Hello guys, this is Alethea, Sweet Sewing Inspirations to you, and welcome to Sail Along Sewing. Today, it's McCall's 8562. I'm interested in B and C. So the dress is going to be made out of the seersucker fabric, which came from Mood, and then I got 2 yards of it. So on the back of the pattern, I'm sewing a size 14. I'm sewing the dress and the jacket. The jacket is view C, and it requires 2 3/8 fabric, which is done out of a different fabric, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. And the dress, they are calling the dress a top, which is B. Here is the line drawing for B. You have a top. They have top B and top A. It's listed like that. So I'm doing top B, which requires 1.5 yards of fabric. And it's an easy sew, as you can see. Here are the suggested fabrics and what's required. This little top or dress is requiring a zipper. And this is how it's looking after sewn up. The little dress and the jacket. So there are 2 types of denim that I'm using. One is, they are both 7-ounce weight of denim, very thin. One is with no stretch at all, and one has stretch to it. So this is what I'm using for the jacket, and it's gonna be a like 2-tone jacket. So the dress is pretty simple and easy, a normally constructed dress. Here you can see the steps that it's going through, the bodice, the zipper, the side seams, until you get to step 16. I believe it's step 16, yes, with the side armholes. And here, I found that to be a kind of difficult area to watch out for. If you haven't really sewn a dress with this, it may be a problem area that could be a problem area that could mess up your garment if you're not familiar with the way that it's supposed to be sewn. So I'm going to show that area in detail. So you're sewing the dots from one side to the other. That's not a problem. Done stitching is not a problem. But it's when you get to 17. That's the real problem that I identified. And that is what I'll be showing in detail. Okay, this is the section of the armhole section and your shoulder straps. When I showed you that the instructions said to sew from one circle, one dot to the other. So this is what you do. You're going to take your shoulder strap, open it out. This is the second strap. Open it out. You're going to match interfacing to interfacing, and facing to facing, lining up your fabric and your notches, and sew across 5/8 into a seam allowance. This is how it's looking after you have sewn across your shoulder straps. Then you lay the fabric down. It folds just like that. It will be sewn across here, and you slip stitch your side. I thought that was interesting. I think I have done that before, but not that often. It kind of threw me for a loop. But make sure you match up your lines. So this is how your seam on your shoulder strap is going to look on the right side of your garment, and you're going to slip stitch along the edges, which is still open. I have them pinned down and press. So now it's the jacket. What you're looking at is the inside facing of the jacket. This is the facings on both sides. This side is bases, this side is pinned, and this is the fabric we're using for the jacket. And just like the dress, the jacket also has pocket. So let's sew the jacket. So here is another collar, attaching or sewing the collar onto this jacket, just as I identified a sort of difficult, critical area in sewing my Simplicity blouse. That was a 1950 vintage blouse, and I'll insert the link at the end of this video and also give you a picture of what I'm talking about. So on the jacket, you're looking at the facing. So there's a dot on either side of the facing of the jacket. You start from the dot and sew all the way along the length of the jacket. Then you do not sew the curve or naked edge yet. So you fold the jacket, the facing to the inside of your jacket, and where the dot was located, you snip to that dot, and you reinforce that dot before starting any of this. You cut to the dot, you also base the collar edges together, and you clip. Then you pull that edge where the dot was clipped, forming this collar base with the clip ends, and you attach the collar. Okay, so here's the finished collar. You're looking at the inside of the collar of the jacket. Denim on the inside and the seersucker on the back side of your collar. I went ahead and serged along the edges. And here is the cuff of your sleeve. So I attached the cuff to the sleeve, and this seam is to go press towards the cuff after you trim. And you sew the edges and trim, and then you're gonna do a stitch in the ditch at 1/8. Buttonhole goes here, and of course the button goes on this side. And this is how your sleeve is gonna look. Here is McCall's 85.62. This is the dress. Your back zipper. The pockets. It's made out of seersucker. And here is the jacket that goes along with this little dress. Your cuffs. It's made out of denim. The jacket also has pockets. Come along and start your fun with Sail Along Sewing, where you can create things sewing old and new. Check out this jacket. It doesn't go with this blouse, but I'm displaying it together because these are some of the things that you can venture into. This is a vintage blouse. Notice the nice buttons and the fabric. This jacket is a spring collection of simplicity with the cups, the collar, and the inside fading. It's made of jean material. Everybody loves jean. And to top it all off, it has pockets. So if you want to continue your sewing journey, old and new, all fun, join the family at Sail Along Sewing. I would love to have you and love to hear from you. Thanks for watching this little clip. See you in the video. Bye. So guys, remember to share the videos and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you have not. I would love to have you in the family. So, what I have discovered when sewing most vintage patterns, there's almost always a section of the garment that you have to construct it with hand sewing. That's fine. But it's also, there is a portion of the construction of the garment that may sound confusing. You have to read and reread it. That what makes the vintage patterns sort of hard, because we're in modern day patterns and we're sewing most of those all the time. So there's a portion almost always in the vintage pattern that you have to pay close attention to and reread. For example, in this garment, the shirt, the blouse, it's the collar area. So what they're asking you to do first is to baste your collar on your blouse, right sides together, and you're basting from one small dot to the next small dot through all of the collar layers. Then this portion, which is the back of the shirt, you only basting the facing and the interfacing to the shirt. And so you're doing the same thing for your other side of the blouse. You're taking the collar and attaching it to the edge of your blouse to the small dot, which is located right here over the shoulder seam. But this, the back section or the middle portion of the collar, the only thing you're sewing together or basting together is just the interfacing and the facing of the collar. This portion of the collar is not attached. Then you're going to bring the front facing across your collar and attach it. To the back portion of side portion of the collar. And when that is done, and you do the opposite side the same way, you take your facing, front facing, the 5/8 seam allowance, you make that 1/4. Turn the collar in like this. Turn the facing in, and you're gonna attach it to your shoulder seam. This is the shoulder seam here, and you're attaching your facing to that seam and you're hand stitching it. Vintage Patterns also has, like I said, a lot of hand stitching and a lot of basting. So then after that is done, you're gonna sew the collar just like you basted in. Both edges, the middle or back portion. And what this is gonna be, how this is gonna be sewn is you, after you sew from the small dots where you left this unattached, you sew this across your 5/8 seam allowance, and you trim the seams closely to the seam, to the stitches. Then you take this portion with your 5/8 seam allowance and cover it up and hand stitch. I thought it was neat, but I just couldn't figure out how that was going to come together. But it's workable. As you can see, I based, and the directions ask you to base. You need to base critical areas like this, because if you can't see what's going on, then if you base it, you can easily take it apart. So let's move on. So this is the conclusion of the nice little blouse that I say remind me of my mom. I had to make this blouse. We'll switch the camera around at this point. These are the buttons that I attached to the blouse. I sewed them on loosely. Got to go back and touch them up. That's how it's looking up in the neck area. Your notches. And I added the little 15-minute or less knit pants that I sewed up in another video. There's the collar. Your sleeves. Looking like that. I think the little combo came out pretty nicely. So guys, remember to share the videos and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you have not. I would love to have you in the family. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you check out the critical section or portion for this blouse. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.